Welcome and thank you for joining us for a Mollie Stone's virtual wine tasting for Valentine's Day and the first day of Year of the Ox, Chinese New Year. With us, we have winemaker Hugh Davies from Schramsberg Vineyards, and he's going to lead us through a delightful tasting of 3 of his sparkling wines. We have a Blanc De Blanc, we have a Blanc De Noir, and we also have a Brut Rosé. All 3 are vintage, and I can hardly wait to get these in my glass. Hugh, please tell us what we got going on here.
Well, Kerry, thank you so much for inviting me to participate with you in advance of the Valentine's Day, President's Day weekend. What a great weekend we have in front of us, right? Fantastic. I'm actually looking at the calendar, 3 days that aren't going to be so busy, maybe like some others. So good weekend to eat well, and to enjoy some very delicious wines. I can tell you that Schramsberg is up in Napa County, the winery, one of the oldest wineries in California, actually, going back to 1862. So the original winery was founded by German immigrants. At a time when there wasn't much winemaking activity happening in California. We think of Charles Krug as being the first winery in Napa. The Schramsberg winery was founded just the next year, so 1861 for Krug, 1862 for Schramsberg. But these folks would make still wines back in that earlier era. They did a really nice job. Frankly, the Schramsberg were so successful that by the end of the 19th century, they were selling wines as far away as London and New York and in Chicago and St. Louis, certainly San Francisco. They were, again, not making sparkling wines at that time, but still wines. Riesling, Schastles, De Rief, Zinfandel were some of those varietals. But unfortunately, there was a period of prohibition that shut the winery down, along with the rest of the wineries in our state. And then this property lay dormant for a number of years. My parents would actually move to Napa Valley in 1965. They were among a new set of winemakers, enthusiastic winemakers who had come to this area. There were a number of these old wineries that had been abandoned, and so they revived one, the Schramsberg winery. So they kept the name Schramsberg, which obviously dates back to that earlier Schramsberg is Schram's Mountain. And so that would become the name of the sparkling wine that they would produce. The first of its type, really made in the United States. The first producers to use the Chardonnay grape, the Pinot Noir grape, to do this traditional method with a bottle fermentation, aging. I'm actually in our tunnel number 2 in the caves. And this was one of those caves that was dug back in the 1800s. Picks and shovels, Chinese labor, kind of a crazy historical spot. Actually listed on, it's one of California's historical landmarks with the special kind of mission plaque out front. But folks have not visited, we'd love to have you join us. Neat spot. So here we are. We've been going for 55 years making bottle fermented sparkling wines in this traditional method. The first wine that we would ever make was, in fact, this one here, the Blanc De Blanc. So this is a white wine. The Blanc term, people may know, is white in French. So Blanc De Blanc is white of white. So this is the white wine made from that white grape, which is Chardonnay. The first wine that we would make in 65, and still today, the wine that we actually make the most of, our most popular style. Very crisp, very palate cleansing, nice, dry, brut style. And I wanted to open it today before we jump in. I know we have some delicious caviar and some other things to taste alongside. I was going to open it with a saber, if you'll allow me. That might be kind of a fun way to kick off our tasting today. So 2017 Blanc De Blanc. So we'll get this open, we'll get it in the glass, and then we'll talk about it for a little bit. Does that sound good plan? Good plan?
That sounds great.
Sounds good. Okay. So I'm loosening the wire here. That makes it a little easier to do the sabering concept. I've got to find the seam on the side of the bottle. That's important. All right. And then, so if you have not seen this done before, it's a good trick. There's a little risk associated with it. You know, no good trick is a good trick if it doesn't have like a small percentage of air possibility. So I found the seam that runs up from the base of the bottle to the neck of the bottle. I'm going to take my blade and I'm going to run right through the top, and we're going to send the top of the bottle down our corridor here. So give me a second. All right, 1, 2, 3.
Woo! That was awesome.
Pretty cool, huh? Thank you very much. Thank you. I can't hear the applause, but I know people are probably just thrilled out there, you know, to see what they've seen. So let me give myself a little bit of pour of the Blanc De Blanc. So 17 was an interesting year. I would imagine most of the attendees are folks that live in Northern California, right? 17, like 2020, we had some pretty challenging forest fires that year. But unlike 2020, where those fires started in kind of August, mid-August, at least in 2017, they really kicked off in October, and we were done with our Chardonnay and Pinot Noir harvest. So it really had no impact on that particular season at all. But let's give this guy a good look here. People may not realize that our vineyards for Schramsberg are, while the winery's up in the north part of Napa Valley, we're working with vineyards that cover a pretty broad range of our north coast. So as we've evolved with our program, we've gotten better and better with the vineyards, and I might even be able to use a little cursor. Tell me, Kerry, can you see the little cursor show up on the map?
Yes, I can. Yep.
Excellent. So right there is where the Schramsberg Winery is located, between St. Helena and Calistoga. I know you're right about here, right in Sausalito. And then further south, some other folks who are tuning in may live deeper into the Bay Area. But as we've evolved, we have gradually moved into the Carneros area with the proximity to the Bay and that cooled water. Boy, Chardonnay and Pinot Noir love the cold proximity to the Bay and also to the ocean. And so over the last 20, 30 years, starting back in the 90s, we moved out towards the Anderson Valley and then down through the Sonoma coast and even into Marin County where you are. Honestly, depending on the year, those vineyards in Marin County are a little temperamental. Sometimes they yield a little more, sometimes a little less, but I'd say between 5 and 10% of our grapes actually come out of Marin County.
All three of these wines have Marin in it. I noticed there are some Marin grapes.
A little bit of Marin, yeah. More Pinot Noir. So as we're tasting the Blanc De Blanc, we do just a touch of Chardonnay out of Marin County, but definitely more Pinot Noir. There's one property that we lease that dates back to right around the turn of the last century. So about a 20-year-old vineyard called Redding Ranch, which is up above Nicasio, if folks can picture where that is. Glorious hillside vineyard with view looking out towards the ocean. The bottom picture there actually is up at Redding. So that guy right there. But anyhow, give you a sense, really diverse set of vineyards. Crisp green apple citrus character to the aroma, right? We've got some really bright, fresh, and Chardonnay at this stage not picked too ripe, right? I think that's interesting for people to realize. You see the alcohol in the bottle; it's only just over 12%, but the initial alcohol in the base, blend that we crafted before it became a sparkling wine was only 11% alcohol. People don't drink 11% alcohol. But if you're making a beautiful brut sparkling wine, that you kind of start out with that, and then the alcohol goes up by just 1% during the bottle fermentation. So that bottle fermentation, of course, creates the effervescence, the bubbles in the glass. And then we age in these capes and give it a little more toasted character. It's a really nice elements of vanillin to the aromas, maybe some gentle custard, lemon custard essence. And then on the palate, really, really crisp and long.
Oh, that's such a beautiful nose. It is aromatherapy. It has a really nice, subtle autolytic nose that I really love.
It's 3 years old, right? This wine, three, almost 3.5, is enough time to give some richness and depth but the fruit is still so fresh, right? It's part of the reason why the fruit is fresh when it's 3 or when it's 10 is that you start with fruit that's picked early in the season with super high acidity, and the initial wines that you make are difficult to enjoy. You know, it's like the pie goes into the oven, but you don't really eat the dough. The dough doesn't taste good until after it comes out of the oven, right? And for that matter, you wouldn't want to start with already cooked apples. You want to start with apples that are crisp and tart. That will make the most interesting pastry, after all. Thinking of food, I'm getting hungry, right? And then we had some special items that we were going to partner with these wines. Maybe we could partner with the first dish.
Yeah.
That's a good idea.
Mollie Stone's year-round has caviar kits, which you can get year-round. You get caviar, a little mother of pearl spoon, blinis, and it's phenomenal. And I think that this would be a beautiful pairing with the blinis and creme fraiche, Bellwether Farms creme fraiche. That's nice and local. And then let's see, let's get a little bit of caviar here.
Now,
that's
Kerry,
what's wonderful is year round. Yeah, exactly. That's it. Look at this bite right here. Isn't that beautiful? Now, what's wonderful, Mollie Stone's has Schramsberg and caviar kits year round.
Life is good. Life is good.
Life is good. I mean, you know, like it's Wednesday. Go to Mollie Stone's, get a bottle of Schramsberg and a caviar kit, and it's delightful. You can celebrate it being Wednesday or Valentine's Day. So let's give this a try. Here, you ready to give this a try? Cheers.
Cheers.
Oh. Oh my God.
I like this virtual tasting.
This is so good. This is hard work.
Cheers. Hey, here's the Valentine's Day. I like your outfit, your whole ensemble, man.
Thank you. Our certified cheese specialist, Chelsea Fortiani, made this for me. We had a virtual cheese tasting and wine pairing yesterday, but let's see how this. Now, one thing I noticed is the mousse has this beautiful laciness that washes across the palate. It is quite a sensory experience, not only just the aromas, but the sensation in the mouth. It's not a prickly sparkling wine. It's a sumptuous sparkling wine with that lace that just spills across the palate. It is just gorgeous. And that acidity with the creaminess and the pops of the caviar. Oh my gosh, this is one of the most beautiful pairing. And Schramsberg, it deserves this. It really does. This is a wine that you sit down and pay attention to. It is just wonderful.
This particular style will taste two others, the most delicate of the three that we'll taste today. And honestly, in some ways, the lightest on its feet of all the sparklings that we do. That's because it's made from Chardonnay, white grape, you know, and in this case, we picked that Chardonnay on the very unripe side. So it's crisp, it's tart. For people who complain about California Chardonnays are always so buttery and rich, right? Not this one. Not this one. And but with that said, it really cuts the cream so well. Similarly, it can go with some really tart and tangy cheeses as well. So it can kind of go in both directions there. But this is a great partner. I think the oyster on the half shell, you know, on a special Valentine's, you know, hey, we live in oyster country too. That would be another fun thing to do this weekend is get a couple dozen oysters and a couple of bottles of, I would say, Blanc De Blanc from our house. That's the best wine for that particular moment, I think, too. It's another good one.
The brininess and that little bit of iodine in the oyster would be just beautiful with this. It would be gorgeous.
We do. We promote that, but we also do that. We have the oyster chuckers at home, and you know, around the holidays, we'll often do oysters on the half shell with Blanc De Blanc, right? It's nice. And the other thing about this wine, obviously, at the grocery store, people aren't thinking to put the bottle into the cart and then put it in the cellar for like 12 years and then open it, right? It's more likely we're going to drink that tonight. But these sparkling wines, as they age, they develop such interesting character too. They remain really vital and vibrant on the palate. So we're probably getting better and better at this as we go along. But there's nothing wrong with, say, a 1991 Blanc De Blanc, right? I know that seems like a long time ago to some people because it was 30 years ago. Hard to say, but yeah, we had the Magnum 91 Blanc De Blanc over the holidays, and it was delicious. Anyway, so just another.
So it has quite an aging potential. It has aging potential.
Yeah, the one thing that people don't always think about with sparkling wines, because they're typically non-vintage, right? There isn't a vintage on the bottle. So if there's not a vintage on the bottle, you might not think to age it, right? I mean, if you were to buy a bottle of vodka or something, it's just you drink it, right? It's not something that you need more than one bottle of, all right? Because when that one's gone, then I'll go get another one, right? A coffee, I don't need a bunch of different coffees. When the one coffee I've got at home is gone, I'll go get more. Now, with wines, people like to save them and collect them and then to choose the special one for that right occasion. But sometimes we don't think about that with sparkling wine. So my parents' vision was to do vintage aged sparkling wine. And obviously at the very high end, I shouldn't say obviously, but for some people may be aware, in the Champagne district of France, say, hey, those vintage dated champagnes, they get to be super expensive and really more special occasion. But here we're also doing vintage dated sparkling wine as more of as a standard practice. And so this wine, 3.5 years old, I think it shows really nicely at this point. But I throw that out, that this could be a wine to be enjoyed years from now too.
I love that it's vintage dated because it gives you a sense of time and place. Now, before we move on to the Blanc de Noir, if any of our viewers have any questions, please feel free to ask away. There are no stupid questions. We're here to answer. And that's the beauty of having a live event, is you get to interact with us in real time. So please, please don't be shy. Welcome to the table. We're all drinking wine together. So now we're going on to the 2016 Blanc de Noir, and I can hardly wait.
So the Blanc Noir, we've always put in the clear glass bottle to show off the white wine made from the dark grape. I love this package, right? This is something, this style we've done since 67. So the Blanc de Blanc since 65, but those have really been the two principal Schramsberg sparkling wines until the rosé came along, right? Now the rosé has taken on a little more popularity. But simply put, the two wines are different, Blanc de Blanc from Blanc de Noir, because of the grape varietal. And so on the little stat sheet here, you can see 81% Pinot Noir, a touch of Chardonnay, right? The Chardonnay's there not to give flavor to the wine, but the Chardonnay will always be a little higher in acidity when that fruit is harvested. It brings that crisp, tart, citrusy nature, which we just tasted in the Blanc de Blanc. And so the Pinot Noir will have a little bit less of that. And so a touch of Chardonnay helps lift, if you will, and give a nice backbone to the Pinot Noir. But as we taste this, you'll find, perhaps a little more stone fruit in the character of the fruit, perhaps some white cherry. The feel on the palate will be more supple and creamy. Think of Pinot Noir as a still wine compared to Chardonnay as a still wine. In this case, they're both made as white wines, but you have a sense for how those different grape varietals really produce different flavors. And so in this case, we make another brut style, right? It's a very dry style, but differentiated from the first wine because of that grape varietal. And so as I indicated, we do a little bit more Pinot Noir in Marin County than Chardonnay. We also do a little bit more Pinot Noir in general through the Anderson Valley up at north in Mendocino County and down through the Sonoma coast as well. Might be interesting for people to consider. We are harvesting these grapes in August, September, at the very beginning of the wine grape growing season. The closer we are to the coast, frankly, some of those Marin vineyards are the last grapes typically that we pick. You've got the bay on one side, the ocean on the other. You know, it can be pretty chilly out there towards the ocean. And so our harvest, while it may start typically mid-August in the Carneros, it might be the end of September by the time we're done with that last Chardonnay vineyard out there in Marin County. We also use primarily stainless steel tanks to do the initial juice fermentations, but we do like to use some barrels, some oak barrels, neutral oak barrels, that give us a chance to create a little softness, a little richness, a little depth of character in our base wines. And then we blend the tanks with the barrels. Typically about 25, maybe 30% of the overall composition is fermented in those barrels and then aged in barrels for about 6 months, versus the majority of the blend coming from the lots that are in stainless steel tanks. And those are temperature controlled, and so they tend to preserve the kind of crisp nature of the fruit a little bit more, and the barrels exaggerate that a little bit. So here we have the Blanc Noir, the really the beautiful white color, almost a gold color of the Pinot Noir. No skin contact at all in the process of making this wine. So while initially the juice has a little bit of a pink hue to it, it becomes a white wine, right? And so that's what differentiates this Pinot Noir from the Pinot Noir that people are more common with, where fermentation was done in contact with skins. The juice would have been in contact with the skins for some 2 weeks, you know, through that fermentation, and there's considerable extraction of color. Here none at all. Again, a certain freshness, a certain brightness, but yet with a different accent from this different grape varietal. 1 year older too. So this is 4 years old as we tasted. The Blanc De Blanc was 3 years, 4.5 years, 3.5 years. And that imparts just a little bit more caramel, a little bit more toast, a little bit more richness. And so we fun to pair with we have the cheese array that we're looking at with this wine. And I would add to that, I mean, here we have a nice little array, but if people are thinking about what do I serve with these sparkling wines, boy, this Blanc Noir with a little cheese platter, maybe some interesting charcuterie, a little olive assortment, you know, very nuts, you know, that's a great kind of sparkling wine that I think would touch on a range of flavors, particularly towards the beginning of the meal. But this is also something rich enough that I think it can really go nicely with a cream-based pasta, various poultry preparations, whole fish preparations. There are a couple of images and ideas to consider.
I'm trying it with our cheese kit. Mollie Stone's has this beautiful cheese kit I could show you. It comes in this little box. I don't know if you could see that. So it's a cheese kit with a variety of different cheeses, 5 different ones. And I'm enjoying it with Briotte Savarin and this Dalmatian rosehip spread. Absolutely wonderful. Briotte Savarin is one of my favorite pairings with sparkling wine. It's a triple cream brie from France. Absolutely beautiful, really heavenly. And Blanc de Noir in general is a great food pairing wine. It just naturally goes with a variety of different foods. I actually like it with steak, you know. I even have it with a steak.
When people ask me what can I enjoy in terms of food with these different wines, one simple rule of thumb that I often will use is that, you know, a Chardonnay sparkling wine is a bit like a Chardonnay wine, right? So if you're thinking about having Chardonnay, okay, then whatever you might serve with that Chardonnay, the Chardonnay sparkling wine might work well. On the flip side of that, now we're on to the Blanc Noir. If there are dishes that you really enjoy drinking a Pinot Noir with, this is a Pinot Noir, right? It's a white wine made from the Pinot Noir, but the essence of flavor, the essence of the fruit, comes from the fruit that the wine was made from. In this case, delicious Pinot Noir, Coastal Pinot Noir. I'm going to try the exact recommendation that you made. I think if I've got the rose hip
The Briat and the rosehip, the Dalmatian rosehip spread is absolutely beautiful because you get that hint of plummy jamminess. It's smooth and silky, and it pairs beautifully with that creamy minerality of the Briat Savon. And then you take a sip of the wine, and it just knits it all together perfectly. I'm still tasting the finish from the Briat and the rosehip spread. Absolutely lovely.
Again, as rich and creamy as the cheese is in this case, the cleansing character of the Blanc Noir, something like we talked about with the Blanc De Blanc, just in a really delicate way, just kind of sets the palate up, and now we're ready to try a bite of something new, right? So I do like this idea of a platter like this, where you have, it's not everybody's going to be the same. You know, the next bite, you know, oh, we'll move on. We'll try a different cheese. I see there's a blue cheese on the plate here. And sometimes blue cheese can be pretty strong for wine. But again, I think with a delicious brut sparkling wine, and in this case, I think the Pinot Noir based style better than the Chardonnay style, will allow us to enjoy a little wine with the blue cheese, cleanse the palate at the same time. So the next bite that we try, the blue cheese isn't necessarily still there, right?
Right. The Bleu d'Auvergne, excuse me, the Bleu d'Auvergne has a nice smokiness and a saltiness that makes you want to quench your thirst with more wine. It's beautiful, that smoky, salty.
Num, num, num.
Oh, you know, I want to ask about different glassware. You know, a lot of people are very specific. Like a lot of somms say, don't ever use a champagne flute. Personally, I like champagne flutes. Mine has a little bit of a tulip at the top, and it works well for me. But some people poo-poo it. I think it's a very personal choice. But what are your favorite vessels in which to drink wine out of? I mean, your personal favorites.
Personal favorite. So I like the question. It comes up quite often. The first thing I would want to say to people that might be listening is don't, hey, you don't have to have the perfect glass. If you've got a glass, you're in good shape. It doesn't matter what the glass is. Let's enjoy the wine regardless, right?
I love that attitude. That's a wonderful attitude.
And it's just one day and it's just one bottle, right? We can try it, and if it's not perfect, we can try a different glass next time. This is one glass that we use in our tasting room. It's kind of a restaurant strength. It's a Riedel Venom champagne glass, referred to as. And you'll see it used today, fairly contemporary. It does have a nice bowl, and then it tapers, and it has the long stem. So I think it achieves a number of objectives that make people happy. I know that some sommeliers will look at it and say, "Oh, it's a little tall. I don't know." So I use that for my Blanc De Blanc today. For the Noir, I selected a different Riedel glass. This one, okay, slightly more expensive, a little more delicate. The stem might break, but I really love this glass. And for our professional tastings, when we are, when the rubber meets the road and we've got to figure out, you know, how to finish the sparkling wine, how do we compare to the other great sparkling wines made in the world? When we do our blind tastings, we do them in this very glass. And so it has a nice, delicate stem, comes to a point. I love actually the visual of that. And normally I'd want even a more liquid in the glass. But again, it opens with a little bit of a bowl and then tapers off. And this wine really presents the aromas to the nose, I think, in an exquisite way. There may be a better glass out there, but I know this one, and this one works really, really, really well. I think if we're trying to be Mr. Sommelier or Mrs. Sommelier or Miss Sommelier.
That's all good. It all works.
It all works.
Somm is a somm.
Sometimes we use glasses that might be a little more frivolous and fun, right? So that one is probably not the ideal one for the tasting purpose, but it could look pretty cool, right? And so I'm going to use this one for my rosé.
And sometimes it's about being festive. If you have a particularly festive glass and you want to drink out of it, well, that's exactly the glass you should use because it'll heighten your experience. It's personal to you. Don't let anybody glass shame you.
Absolutely not. And there are people out there who will try.
Yeah. Oh,
I can tell you that.
they're such a drag. Hey, we have a quick question, Hugh. I'm curious.
Okay.
Is the nose of a sparkling wine the same as the still version of that wine?
It's similar, right? And so we talked about that. Chardonnay is Chardonnay, but in the case of the Blanc De Blanc versus a still wine Chardonnay. But the couple of things. Number one, when we pick our Chardonnay grapes, or the Pinot Noir grapes for that matter, we are picking early in the season. So we actually harvest that fruit, it's 3 to 4 weeks before you might pick it for making the still wine. So it's considerably less ripe in that moment, more vibrant with its acidity. So the aromatic character, while similar, it's delicate. It's like it's a little bit more raw. Now, that's part of the reason why we age these for some period of time. In the case of these two bottles, one 3.5 years, one 4.5 years, most of that time in a cave like this, right? In a bottle with yeast in it. And so it starts to toast and caramelize, and it ripens a little bit more actually in the bottle. Pretty interesting. But the essence of fruit is the same. A Chardonnay has citrus and apple type of character. All right, this citrus and apple is on the very kind of a little bit more of the raw, unripe side, where, hey, if you try a 15% alcohol Chardonnay, that's got some baked apple and maybe a little, a toasted pineapple, and it's really started to become a bit more exotic. So hopefully that makes sense to people. Honestly, the difference between our Pinot Noir here, a Blanc Noir, and a 15% alcohol red Pinot Noir, they're even more different because we've not only picked it riper, but we fermented in contact with skins. And so you get a lot more of the berry tones in Pinot Noir typically than we did in our Blanc Noir tonight. But there are hints of that and a reminder of that fruit.
Hey, Hugh, I have a quick question. It's two parts. One is, what does your dosage consist of? And the other, how does that dosage affect the final flavor of the wine?
Yeah, dosage is important, and for some people who may not know exactly what is this dosage, I can explain that we initially picked that fruit in the August, September time period. We make these low alcohol wines. We then blend those low alcohol wines together to make the perfect blend. We bottle with yeast and sugar. We stick the bottles into the caves. Fermentation happens in 1 month, right? So that's a fairly quick process. In the case of this 16 Blanc Noir, we bottled it in, say, May of 17. By June of 17, sparkling wine, already sparkling. Now we age it. And so we aged it for 3 years, sitting, just nobody touching the bottle, in contact.
3 years on the lees? Wait, it's on the lees 3 years?
Yeah, for this Blanc Noir. Yeah.
That's a big deal.
Big deal.
That's a big deal.
Some of the bottles may be 3.5. The reality is that we do some crazy things, granted a little more expensive, where, it's 8 years, 20 years.
Whoa, that's amazing.
Anyway,
like J. Schram, something like that.
J. Schram would be 7-8 years. And then the latest scored J. Schram, there's some versions that we've done as many as 20 years. So pretty cool. But anyway, once we have finished aging, then it's time to move to the next stage. So we riddle the bottles to get the yeast to go down into the neck of the bottle, right? So a gradual turns of the bottle on its, we turn like this to collect all the yeast right here into the neck of the bottle.
Do you do that by hand, or is it mechanical? You're riddling.
We still do probably 20% by hand, and then the balance is done in cages, so mechanical riddling. Either way achieves the same objective with our smaller lots, typically done by hand. It can be, but it can go either way. Nonetheless, once we're done with that, if done in a cage that's rotated 3 times a day, as opposed to the bottles in the racks that are rotated just once, we will then take the bottles out of the racks where the yeast has been collected nicely in the neck. We dip it into a liquid that will actually is minus 10 degrees, but it doesn't freeze, kind of like antifreeze in your car, but food grade. And then that forms an ice plug in the bottle containing the sediment. Once that's happened, it takes about 3 minutes, 5 minutes, that's it. Flip the bottle over. Note all the bottles here behind me have crown caps on them, right? Not corks. And then we'll just pop the crown cap off. The pressure that was created during the fermentation 3 years earlier will fire the ice plug out, taking the sediment with it. And then the dosage comes in, right? So the dosage is the final little balance. Touch of sugar is present there, but just a touch, just 6 or 7 milliliters in a bottle that's 750 milliliters. And then that sugar is blended with a little bit of wine to give some additional nuance, frankly. We've like 70, 80 different lots of wine up in some other caves, barrels that we use for dosage preparation. I could bore you with more details on how we get to decide which wine goes, but suffice to say, just a tiny little touch of sugar. So you're less than 1% in terms of the residual sugar in these very dry sparkling wines. And if you add nothing in terms of sugar, then it's a little, it's
austere. It's way too austere, way too acidic. Yeah.
And so then there's malolactic fermentation that, some producers do 100% of, and then that drops your acidity and whatever. But so there are different things, different tools, if you will, we have as winemakers. But yeah, no, it's a crazy process. The amount of effort that goes into making, bottle fermented sparkling wine. Sometimes it doesn't get as much credit as it probably should. But hey, we're not.
But that dosage elevates a certain nuance and a mouthfeel and a balance of acids.
And it gives the wine an opportunity to really age beautifully too, right? There's a preservative impact a little bit. Obviously, something like honey doesn't change very quickly in your cupboard, right? And so yeah, just a touch. I mean, as you taste these wines, you wouldn't even notice there was, but it is. And with that said, some still wines might have a little residual sugar, balancing the tart acidity that is in the juice, right, that we start out with. Interesting for people to consider what percent of sugar is in the juice when we pick those grapes. It's actually 20%. And if you're making a 15% alcohol wine, then it's 25%, 26%. So, it can be 30% depending on what you're looking for. So the juice that we start out with is quite sweet. And then once you take all the sugar away and there's only alcohol left, it can be a little austere, to use that word you used.
I am really craving pink wine. Really, it's going to be Valentine's Day in 2 days. And I really want to try this rosé, this Brit rosé. Can you lead us through this tasting, Hugh?
Happy Valentine's Day. This is fun. Rosé is it's going to be really delicious, right? This is for me. I've been doing this for, I've been here my whole life, but over the last 30 years I've been pretty focused on what we do, and it's been a delight to see this interest in rosé. In our case, sparkling wine, rosé, still wines as well. Pinot Noir, but delicious Pinot Noir, and then paired with Chardonnay again. So here you'll see a mix, about 28% Chardonnay. Again, that Chardonnay giving us the nice crisp entry, the long finish. And then with some of the Pinot Noir lots, we're allowing them to ripen just a hair more. We'll ferment some of that juice in contact with skins to give us just a little bit of color, a little bit more of that tangy red berry essence of flavor. And I think that people should enjoy this. We're really seeing an uptick in interest in this category. We make a multi-vintage rosé, the Maribel rosé, that also has a pretty good following. And then at our top level, there's a J. Schram rosé that pretty tasty. Actually did a virtual tasting with that one, our 2012 last night. So vintage dated 2017 again. 17 was the first year of quite a bit of rainfall after 4 years, 5 years, frankly, of a very low amount of rainfall before vintage. And so we had an abundant crop in this particular year. The fruit essence is always bursting. I think as a producer, we're interested in seeing a little bit of that kind of strawberry starburst kind of, pop out of there. And then I think today we've got, I see you're tasting the strawberry already. This would be a really nice natural partner for that dish. And I think, obviously an ideal wine for a Valentine's celebration. So I poured this one into our kind of more festive flute, and that's fun. The effervescence is definitely shining in this presentation a little bit more than it would in our more professional glass, right? That we used earlier. But hey, let me give this guy a taste.
But Hugh, the presentation of effervescence, that also has a lot to do with the temperature of the wine too, right? So the colder the wine, the fizzier it's going to appear. Is that correct?
Well, at some point, if it's really, 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 really cold, then it probably won't fizz at all, right? It'll be kind of slushy. But these beautiful beads, and this one, again, I'll give all credit to the glass. This is just a line, everything is starting here at with this little point, if you will, and then the beads are just emanating from that one point. So you really see a lot of expression, if that's important. If the perception of the aroma is more critical, then it's hard to do that without the bowl opening and then tapering it at the top. So hey, that doesn't mean you can't enjoy it in this sense as well.
Oh, it's nice to have variety. It's the spice.
I love it. I would, if you were to have a couple of different glasses of wine in an evening with the meal, or however that experience may unfold, I would advise trying different wines, right? Don't drink 3 glasses of the same wine. That's not so much fun. And then if you're going to try a couple of different wines, try each one in a different glass. Why not? And experiment and enjoy. I'm often reminded that we're fortunate we have so many days to enjoy food and wine. We should probably not do it exactly the same way every single day. We won't learn as much.
That is a fantastic perspective to have, is to always be intellectually curious. Don't be afraid to make mistakes. Sometimes the mistakes are what teaches you the most, what doesn't work as well as what does work. Hugh, I'm curious, when I see TA and pH, what does that mean to the wine drinker? I mean, can we sense TA? Can we sense pH? What do those numbers mean to the casual wine drinker?
So TA, they both refer to the measure of acidity. And again, a natural acidity that is in the fruit initially when it's harvested, that resides in the wine, years later. And so the TA is the titratable acidity, or sometimes referred to as the total acidity, but this is a measure of the quantity of acidity that is in a wine in this case. And those measures may not mean too much if you don't have a sense for the range. I can tell you that a wine, in this case, with 8 grams of acidity, that's really high. That's kind of crazy high. You'd see that a little bit in sparkling wine. Oh, that's because we pick those grapes so earlier in the season that we start out with a lot of vibrant tart acidity. When we looked at the Blanc De Blanc, that was, I think, over 9 grams with its acidity. And in a more extreme year, we might even kiss up towards 10 with something that's all Chardonnay, right? And so that gives you a sense for that. When we make still wines from these varietals, then that same number will likely be 5 or 6. Could be 7. 7's pretty darn high, though. That is a very, very tart still wine. But 5 or 6 would be more. So you're seeing a reduction of almost 50%, right, from a peak. So that is something to consider. With some examples, they may come in closer to 4. Now the pH is a slightly different measure. We look at that as it kind of is a reflection of the concentration of hydronium ions. You're a real scientific nerd, right?
That's a great explanation. The concentration of
H plus ions, right, in the solution. And so there you have it. pH in water is 7. pH in wine is typically somewhere between 3 and 4, right? With sparkling wines, again, kind of leading the charge on the very low end of that scale. The lower the number, the higher in acid, right? And so with these wines, typically we're seeing pHs that are in the 3 to 3.2. We've done some that might be 2.9. So that's getting pretty. That's pretty tart. That's pretty tart. Malolactic fermentation, we don't talk about too much. Winemakers do, but that influences wine. In red wines, malolactic fermentation is always done, and so that will raise the pH and lower the acidity. And these sparkling wines that we're producing, we do just a few tiny little bits of malolactic fermentation with a few of the lots before our blends are crafted, and so we allow for the acid to stay really high in the finished wine. If we wanted to do 100% malolactic fermentation, then they'd be lower in acidity and higher in pH.
You know what I'm curious about? I always love to break rules. And I'm thinking that this rosé would be beautiful with sushi. What are your favorite non-traditional pairings with any of these wines? Things that people might not consider?
Well, the things that are salted and simple, like popcorn and your tastiest potato chip that you can possibly find, those can be good, right? That's
my favorite. Potato chip and sparkling wine is my favorite.
I know it sounds a little like we dumbed it down, but those can work. You can make it a little more fancy, as we did here with the caviar. I thought that was absolutely
mind-blowing.
My bubbles. I love oysters with my bubbles. We do have quite a bit of fun, particularly with these sparklings as they age a little bit, and even more so with those aged Pinot styles. Thanksgiving dinner, man, break out an old Magnum of Schramsberg Reserve, right? And a beautifully aged Pinot-based sparkling with that turkey grease and the stuffing, and that can be really, really quite yummy. And so I would encourage people to enjoy these wines beyond kind of that entry moment, or sometimes we have it with dessert, right? We have it at the beginning of the meal, or we have it at the end of the meal. But you can really enjoy sparkling wines as you would with white wines or red wines with the meal. Sometimes, frankly, back to glassware, I'll even use a larger glass like this to make that point. You're like, hey, just put it in the big old burgundy glass and enjoy the sparkling Pinot. Ignore the bubbles, right? Taste it, right? And can go beautifully. So with pork tenderloin, with a 5 to 10 year old or even older Blanc Noir, I think is a delicious option to go with. So that gives you some enthusiasm for that concept.
It sounds absolutely wonderful. I'm thinking this with toro, like fatty tuna.
Oh my God.
I love sushi.
Is working. I will tell you now, the pandemic has changed things, of course, but I would say from 2015 to 2019, the amount of Schramsberg that we're selling in Asian restaurants, and even more specifically Japanese restaurants around the country, is good, right?
Yeah. Awesome.
Oishi, right?
Oishi desu yo. Totemo oishi desu.
There you go. Our number one country for exports is Japan, and our number 2 is Korea. And so, sometimes people are like, really? Because they don't make sparkling wine in Japan and Korea, but they love the sparkling wine, fine sparkling wines with their cuisine. And so we've been able to play a little part in all of that. I've done a couple of trips to Seoul and to Tokyo, and it's fun. It's fun to see how this is a very cross-cultural thing. But here in the Bay Area, boy, we have a great access to absolutely delicious Asian cuisine as well. And so good opportunities there. Love it with the tuna, love it with the salmon. And from there, all the other options on top of that. Sometimes heat and spice is not too bad with the sparkling either, right? You know, again, that notion of you don't want the heat to stay in your mouth forever. Oof, you know, the sparkling can help to balance that, cleanse that, and you're ready to go on to the next bite.
You know, with the rosé, I'm pairing it with chocolate covered cherries, which are available it just for Valentine's Day on our website. It is catering.molliestones.com. And so I'm trying the chocolate covered strawberry with the rosé. It's beautiful. I also tried it with the chocolate covered cherries that came with the cheese tasting kit that's also available on catering.molliestones.com. Beautiful. It paired really well. But back to your point of pairing with something like a Thanksgiving dinner. A sparkling rosé is my favorite pairing with Thanksgiving because you have all these hot, heavy, fatty things on the plate. And when you have this nice, fruity, acidic, light thing to cleanse your palate in between bites, you don't feel as full or weighted down. It is absolutely perfect with holiday meals. But to me, a sparkling rosé signals Valentine's Day always. Just wonderful. This is, and you know, the nose on this, I could tell it's Pinot Noir. You can blindfold me and put it to my nose, and I'd immediately recognize it as Pinot Noir. Very, very varietally correct. It's just beautiful in the nose.
You get the just ripening strawberry, just ripening raspberry kind of essence. You know, there are those little tangy berry candies sometimes that we get to taste. You know, and there's they have aromas too, right? And they can be somewhat intoxicating. As winemakers, we're excited when we find one of our base wines that has that's got a little of that just gorgeous strawberry starburst essence, right? And then we want some of that in this wine. We want some of that. It doesn't want to be just like that, but you want some of that as a nuance. Again, the notion of barrels are used here. The notion of aging in contact with yeast that imparts just some of the nuttiness, some of the creamier and just slightly roasted tones that you'll find in the aromas and flavors too. So it's a balance of those bright, fresh fruit essences with some of these richer tones.
As we're winding down, I want to encourage our viewers to ask questions. If you have any questions, please ask away. Don't be shy. We would love to hear what you have to say or any questions you have. So, oh God, the nose on this is just amazing.
It looks like there was a question on riddling. I caught that. One thing I was we can just reference briefly the red wine program that we've also developed, and then the upper tier of our sparkling. So if you see my little cursor here, I'm highlighting the J Schram, the J Schram Rosé and the Reserve. We tried the Blanc De Blanc, we tried the Blanc Noir, and we tried our rosé under the Schramsberg label. These three are the special select, and you referred to that J Schram earlier, but the J Schram Brut is our special select Blanc style. The Schramsberg Reserve is our special select Noir style, and then there's J Schram Rosé. So those three represent, 5-7% of our overall production in a year. The three that we tasted today, maybe more like 60%, right? And so before we do these much larger blends, well, part of our job as winemakers is to figure out, how do we craft, that ultimate expression. And so these three kind of represent that, and then they are aged for longer. So currently we're selling the 2011 on the Reserve and the J Schram, and then our J Schram Rosé we've released in 2012, just to give people a slightly different perspective on that. And then just sliding over, as we got better and better with our sparkling wines, we gradually came to terms with the fact that our home property here on Diamond Mountain above Calistoga might not be the best spot for the Chardonnay and Pinot Noir grapes, so it's sparkling wine. That's where we started, but hey, you learn as you go along. Alternatively, what a great spot to grow Cabernet Sauvignon. And so we have been producing the J. Davies Cabernet, noted here with the shot in the middle, named after my dad, Jack, since the 2001 vintage. Started replanting here in 94. So the next thing you know, we've been it's almost 30 years since we started this red wine project. The bottle on the right is the ultimate expression from the property. We call the J. Davies Jamie. So that is my mom's signature, and we produced that after she had passed away. But that was first made in 2012. And those are, they're nice wines. We make them in St. Helena. There's a Davies winery as well as the Schramsberg winery. Both are open for tastings at this stage outside, but hopefully we'll at least keep being able to go outside. And then you have a shot into the barrel room where we store the Cabernets. We're also doing just a little bit of still wine as Pinot Noir. So that's another part of our overall program, the Davies Winery there in St. Helena, but just to throw that out there.
Nice. It very, very interesting. This has been wonderful. I'm hoping that more people have questions. No questions? Okay, I have a question, and it's kind of a nerdy thing. Let's say I have a bottle of champagne in my fridge, and then I decide, oh, I don't want to drink it tonight, and I put it back in my cellar.
Yeah.
Is there going to be any degradation in flavor or quality?
It'll change just like a still wine would change, right? I mean, if you open a bottle of Chardonnay or Cabernet, and then you pour a couple of glasses and you put the cork back in and you set it aside, come back the next day, it will have evolved a little bit, but it doesn't fall off a cliff by any stretch. It just changes a little bit. One thing that I would recommend people have, it's not a really expensive device, is a bottle stopper. So for the rosé, I've already put the stopper in the bottle. I've tasted a little. We can certainly use this bottle tomorrow for tastings here at the winery. Not a problem. If I pour out all 2/3 of the bottle, okay, now the next day, even with the stopper, some of the gas will have dispersed throughout the bottle and it won't look quite as sparkling. But with this, I mean, our presentation will be spot on. And so in our fridge at home, honestly, I have I think 2 or 3 bottles of sparkling wine that are open and partial all the time. And I enjoy looking at them the next day or 2 days or 3 days later, just to see how it changes. It's subtle and it's not bad, actually. It's just kind of slightly different. You'll lose a little bit of that fresh, crisp, all right, brightness, but not too much. We've already aged these darn things for years, right? Well, it's a couple of days.
I've noticed that sometimes a bottle is better the second day, and you think that wouldn't be the case, but if you have a keeper like this and it's on top of the bottle, this is such an important tool for a well-ordered household, is to have this, and it just snaps right on.
Is exactly the same as the one I've got.
Yeah. And it's like 2 to 3 days, you're fine. I know Susan's saying, what's an unfinished bottle? Well, if you have 3 of them in your fridge at one time and you're tasting them, you might have a little bit of unfinished wine.
I think one comment I'll make on that is, around Thanksgiving, that meal stands out because we put a little bit of the turkey on the plate. We put a little of the stuffing. We put a little bit of the mashed potatoes. We put maybe the green beans. We in our house, we always do some wild mushrooms. You might have some cranberry sauce. Okay, you've got all these different areas on your plate, all these different little flavors. In some ways, with this cheese platter too, right? We have all these different flavors. Well, why only have one wine? I'm not encouraging people to just like drink ad nauseum, but one thing that we definitely do, I mean, if you're going to sit down and enjoy a beautiful meal, you're probably going to have a couple of glasses of wine, and you're not going to just drink the first bottle till it's gone, then start the next bottle. It's okay to have a glass and then to move on and have a glass of something else. And frankly, at Thanksgiving, we'll typically pour 2, maybe even, I mean, it sounds crazy, but maybe even 3 different wines that everybody has kind of at the beginning of the meal, because we have so much food to eat. So you can try the different wines while you're trying the range of food. And I think so often with wine or beverages, people just stick with the one beverage and they don't want to have anything else. And so I would encourage people to play around with that.
Hugh,
Wines.
I love how you think. Hugh, I love how you think. You spark that intellectual curiosity. Don't be afraid of making mistakes. Try different things, try different combinations, especially when you break the rules. That's when you discover things that are absolutely
You may really
delightful.
like, yeah.
Um, I want to wrap things up. Hugh, you have been totally awesome. I love the Schramsberg, all of the Schramsberg wines from J. Schram on down, and even to Mirabelle, beautiful wines. I'm very grateful for you for joining us and grateful to our viewers for being here. I want to say hello to Denise and Carol Shelton, one of my favorite winemakers who's watching right now. One of the things I also want to mention are there are other upcoming virtual tastings. March 18th between 4 and 5 p.m., our certified cheese specialist, Chelsea Fortiani, is going to be leading a tasting with Cowgirl Creamery. And then also on March 25th, we're going to be featuring the wines of Rutherford Ranch. So join me on March 25th. You can check out molliestones.com/events. Again, that's molliestones.com/events. And really, really, thank you for spending this time with us. It means a lot to me. It's the first day of Year of the Ox. 新年快乐 and 恭喜发财. And to you, Hugh, this was really, really great. I'm a huge fan of you. So, and your wines. So, to that I say cheers.
There you go. Cheers. Thank you so much. Happy Valentine's Day, everyone. Enjoy the great President's Day weekend.